Welcome to another episode of the Burg Podcast, where we talk about all things Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Also known as the Hub City or just the Burg, Hattiesburg is a bustling town in southern Mississippi. It's an educational, cultural, business, and medical hub for the region, and we're pleased to share stories from our community. On today's episode of the Burg Podcast, we discuss individuals finding their passions as well as the loss of a loved one and one student's experience with it. First up, Sophia LaPalm kicks off this episode with an interview with Erica Owens, a former reporter for the Hattiesburg American.
I'm Sophia LaPalm for the Burg Podcast. Today I'm interviewing Erica Owens. My guest is a former reporter for the Hattiesburg American. She worked there from 2008 to 2011. Her beat was crime and the courts. Owens will share her experiences with the news industry and how they still impact her today. How long did you work as a journalist?
That's kind of a hard question to answer. Let me see. About 10 to 12 years. I took a couple of breaks here and there and then freelanced a good bit, but it was still in journalism, so I'll count that.
What parts of your college education prepared you the most for your career?
The practice. Actually being told, go out, find this information, talk to these people, having my work critiqued, suggestions given, that sort of thing. That's what helped the most.
What motivated you to become a journalist?
That's kind of a long story. My mother was a police officer in Hattiesburg, and she was killed in the line of duty. One of her very best friends was a journalist. It was not an event that my family would do more than just sort of touch on the details about. So as I got older, I was able to look up old news articles and, different kinds of things like that. And that's how I could discover what actually happened to her. And I was always a pretty decent writer, and I had a way of getting information from people, so I sort of fell into it as a teenager with freelancing for little editorial columns and fun articles and that kind of thing, and then I got here and started doing lots more.
What should every young journalist know before entering the field?
Other than always have a really good pair of shoes on you. No matter what part of the industry you're working in, always keep shoes that you can run in. Be prepared for the unexpected. Be prepared to get your feelings hurt. A lot of times people who go into journalism have a bit of a creative streak in you, and we wear our feelings on our sleeves at times, and you have to really learn to be able to take criticism. Sometimes it's constructive, sometimes it's not, but you've got to learn how to be able to take criticism.
What was the most memorable story you worked on?
Oh gosh, there's a bunch of them. I think the most memorable one was it was a mother and her pregnant daughter were both killed, and the mother had a twin and a huge, loving, very connected family, and that story, that one stuck with me. That is one that stayed with me, was interviewing the mom, the grandmother, I guess you would say, and learning about the family, the twin dynamics. That one probably stuck with me. That wasn't a heartfelt and, give you warm, fuzzy feelings kind of thing, but that one stayed with me.
To what extent did the transition from print media to digital media affect you?
Not a lot. It was more exciting to me because I've always been kind of a gadget nerd in a way. So the more resources that we were given to use, the more excited I got to use them. I think the first time I ever did a piece where I did a short video and made it into a slideshow with still photos and, voiceover and attached it to a story, that was like a highlight.
Can you describe the changes the Hattiesburg American went through after newspapers became digitized?
They downsized a lot. I can't even say that there's boots on the ground because there really isn't. They pull people, they pull stories and information from various other resources, and it's not as big a part of the community as it once was. It used to be having that large local newspaper that was a big deal. It was a big deal for you to be featured in it. It was a big deal to be interviewed by it. It was a big deal to write for it. And now it's less personable.
How many people worked there during your time at the Hattiesburg American?
Oh, I feel like we had 3 full-time photojournalists, a couple of editors, and I want to say between 6 and 8 reporters. We all had different beats. I was the cops and courts beat. One of my good friends was the city beat. We did a lot of things together. We all had our favorite photographer for different things. That's not counting the printing staff, the managing staff, the marketing staff. There was a lot of people. I can't even really give you a number. There was a lot of people, more than just what was in the newsroom.
Does it shock you that they have dwindled to only 2 people working there now?
Yes and no. When I left the industry full-time and just dropped down to doing freelance work and I'm having my own photography business, it was already sort of on the downcline. On like the downhill slope. Even when I worked there, we were given furlough days where we were basically told, hey, you have to take off. Yeah. I can't remember how many it was a quarter. It was 1 or 2 a quarter, but you knew, when you were budgeting for your monthly expenses that, okay, this month is going to have a furlough day. So we're just not going to get paid for that. And that was kind of happening across at the corporate level. And then shortly after I left, the layoffs started and it just kept going. So I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised.
Why do you think it is so important for communities to have their own local news sources?
Because when a community has their own local news source, those writers, those reporters, they become a part of the community. When you have, like I said, boots on the ground in a way, you have people out and about, that's how you find out what's going on, and that's how you can report what's going on. That's how, if there's something corrupt going on, that's how it's discovered. If there's something wonderful going on, that's how it's discovered. Without that, you have to rely on the public to send you, make comments under a news story of why didn't you cover this or why didn't you do this, And I feel like it's important to have that in a community, and it's sad that that's kind of gone away.
Do you think that WDAM has the same role in the community that the Hattiesburg American did in its prime, or do you think that they have a different role in the community?
No. Back in the day, everybody competed against each other and worked with each other at the same time. This goes back to my always have good shoes kind of thing. We had a really big ice storm, and I was wearing chunky-heeled boots, which was not very smart, and the cameraman from WDM was wearing almost like hiking boots, and so was one of our photographers. And then CBS used to have a substation here, and he was wearing dress shoes. So out of those, you can imagine which 2 slid down the hill at this story, right? But it was almost like a moment of camaraderie and laughter and everybody just kind of gripping onto each other. That's how the news used to be, and there was even a joke. The WDAM cameraman was like, you're sliding so you can try to get down there faster. It was more than it, there was more relationships back then. I don't see that as much with WDAM now. I do with some reporters, I'm currently a teacher and a coach, so occasionally we will see WDAM reporters show up at football games or basketball games and that kind of thing, but it's not like it used to. Used to you would have them spread out all over the place, and they would be there the entire time and talking with members of the community and that kind of thing, and now it's like they're trying to make 2 games in a night and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's very different now.
Where do you get your news from?
Just like everybody else, social media.
Has your experience working in the news changed your perspective on the media?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not going to go into the actual details of it, but there was one instance where it was Easter, and normally you would have a certain religion featured for Easter. And that year we had a new managing editor, and she was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. And she put something completely different that was almost the opposite of said religion. And, above the fold. That was always the big thing, above the fold and below the fold. You wanted above the fold. So above the fold was something completely different than, the traditional Easter story. And that was kind of one of the first times where I was like, we're not supposed to be biased. And yet here we go with the bias.
Can you give some advice on how readers should approach news from major media networks?
I don't want to say just with a grain of salt, but don't focus on just one. look at other sources, just like you would in you should have been taught in your classes, is never go with just one source. Three is a good starting point. 5 is even better. If it's something big, look for other sources. If it's some cutesy, heartfelt story, fine. Something else is always interesting to do and can also be disappointing at times. But if you're getting your news from a social media source, and I'm not saying like Jeffree Star telling you what's going on out in Montana or Wyoming or wherever it is that he lives, meaning like if you see that blurb and a photo and the click here article and that kind of thing. But look in the comments, because occasionally there's people who are going, wait, that's not exactly true. I was there. That's something you can do, but always, I guess the main thing would be to use other sources, look at other sources.
What do you think the media can do to heal their relationship with the American public?
Start by making a deliberate effort to show multiple sides. Do not zero in on just one side of the story, one opinion. Show multiple sides. A great mentor of mine used to tell me that newsprint was black and white, but the world wasn't. There were a lot of colors in there, and you had to look at all the other colors, not just the black and white. And that's really how news should be, but I don't know that it ever has been.
Thank you so much for talking with us. I'm Sophia LaPalme for the Burg Podcast.
Next up, let's hear from Michaelin Williams about the loss of her grandmother and a few memories she has of her.
My favorite person ever was my grandma. She died when I was 10, and I honestly don't think my life has been the same since. Grief is an emotion that I never knew impacted me in the way that it does. I'm still learning how to deal with it every day. It's the one feeling I never get used to. I grew up in environments where feelings were never really talked about, but they were always felt. It's like knowing you're being hit with something, but don't know you have bruises, and don't know the severity of those bruises. It's a really wild emotion to experience and understand. It also shows up and affects everyone differently. As a child, I was always with my grandma and granddaddy. I would get dropped off to their house every day after school. 9 times out of 10, my grandma always had food on the stove. She loved cooking and made everything from chicken and dumplings to sweet potato pies. She used to make big batches of her sweet potato and pecan pie mixtures because she sold them around Thanksgiving time. I remember standing next to her as she chopped green onions to go in the dressing she also sold for the holiday. I loved when she made my favorite, macaroni and cheese. I still remember how it tastes, and nobody else's comes close. One of my favorite memories of her is when I saw her drive for the first time. She stayed in the dead-end road, which we called the alley. Her house was near the beginning of the road, and her sister's house was up the road. I spent most of my childhood riding a bike up and down the street with my cousins after school. This time, I had went in the house, and my grandma looked like she was about to go somewhere. I said, "Where you going?" And she was like, "Up the road." I said, "How you getting there?" She said, "I'm driving." I said, "You can drive?" She said, "Watch." I'm realizing now that I've always been curious, or as she liked to put it, nosy. My granddaddy had this 2000s white GMC Ford pickup truck, so that's what she drove, and I was on my bike. She backed out the driveway and sped up the road. She beat me there, and I was so shocked because I had never ever seen her driving before. I was like 8 or 9 when this happened, but I remember it so clearly. All I have is memories of what used to be, and I can't help but wonder what new ones we would have if she was still here. I still remember the day she passed like it was yesterday. I was at school, and we were taking a test. We had just come from lunch, and my stomach started to hurt out of nowhere. I went to the bathroom, then went back to finish my assignment. My mama was a middle school teacher in the same district, so I would get dropped off to her every day after school. I would sit with 2 ladies in the hallways until the middle schoolers were released from school. This time, the ladies looked at me with pity when I walked in and told me that my mama had a doctor's appointment and my cousin would be on the way to get me in a few minutes. This had never happened before, so I'm thinking it must have been an emergency for my mama to not have plans for me to be taken care of. Shortly, my cousin came, and when I got in the car, I knew something had happened because she looked tired, like she had been crying all day or something. We drove about 10 minutes to the nearest hospital, And I started asking questions like, is my mama okay? And who going to the hospital? My cousin wouldn't answer me. So we pulled up to the hospital, the emergency part of the hospital, and all of my aunties, cousins, uncles were standing outside crying, and I knew something was up. I got out of the car. My mama and daddy came over to me, and my daddy told me that my grandma had died. He told me she had a heart attack. I just cried and cried because I had just seen her and didn't understand how she could be gone. I didn't think it would be her. By the time the funeral came, I didn't even go see her in the casket. You know, the family sits in front. I didn't even sit with them because I just couldn't. These are some of the only memories from my childhood that I vividly remember. There's so much I wish I could have talked to her about over the years. I wonder how our relationship would be. I wonder how my family's relationship would be. If it would be different. I still go visit her 3 sisters and 1 brother any chance I get, but of course, it's not the same. My favorite thing about my grandma was how much she cared and paid attention to those she loved, especially me. She always had a passion of giving back to her community and showing them love through her cooking. Everyone knew her as Minnie Lee or Aunt Minnie Lee, but I knew her as my grandma. I didn't have much time with her, but I'll never forget her and how much she told me she loved me. Life comes with death. It's inevitable. So I believe we should cherish our people while we can. I'm Kaylin Williams for the Burg Podcast.
Lastly, Catherine Price talks about her love for photography. Kennedy Lambert has the report.
Price, originally from San Antonio, Texas, sparked a strong interest in photography and media early on.
The end of high school into college, I got the opportunity to work with a bunch of social media accounts for different people and eventually my sorority social media. And so that kind of capturing of the moment love for photography and media came together.
Once this interest unveiled itself, Price decided to choose a major that matched this passion, and this major would later open doors to new opportunities to explore her newfound skills.
First, I wanted to go the marketing business route just because my entire family is full of business people. But then once I got into my major, I just decided that I really didn't want to go with the businessy traditional route, and that I wanted to finally pick my creative side over the business side that I naturally have. And so that's when I switched my major, actually my sophomore year, to PR and advertising in the community.
Through her passion for photography and media, Price chose to pursue a career in the marketing and communications industry, and more specifically in marketing and branding.
So my ideal kind of job or career that I'd want to work in is anything within the marketing industry, but also what that is branched off of now with the evolution of all this new marketing is more of branding communication and how people can get their brand idea out there on a personal level. And
not only does her education and experience align with her career aspirations, but to fast track her goals, Price has decided to begin her journey in making these dreams become a reality.
I most recently just launched Cat Photography and Media. This was kind of the biggest push that I've done to promote and digitalize all the work that I've been doing over the last couple of years, and to just fully display my creativity and my ideas that I've been putting together over this little span of time of my hobby.
After graduating, Price plans to move back home to San Antonio to continue exploring and expanding her career in the photography and media world. I'm Kennedy Lambert reporting for the Burg Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Burg Podcast. This podcast is totally produced by students in Dr. Dave Davies' MCJ 344 podcasting class in the School of Media and Communication at the University of Southern Mississippi. Producers for this episode are Madison Calkins, Sydney Stokes, Michaelin Williams, and Denari Washington. Music from Upbeat. See the link in our About page for more information. Cover artwork by Madison Calkins and Greta Graves.